Well, hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Tiffany and I usually focus on grad school vlogs as a student in a mental health counseling program while parenting my own 4 children. And I wanted to do a little bit of a different video today. Today is going to be a kind of sit down video talking about my recent experience of training in EMDR as a student. So I thought this might be helpful for people if you're wondering, should I, do EMDR training? I'm going to just share my experience. If you're not familiar with what EMDR is, EMDR stands for Eye Movement Desensitization and Reprocessing. It is quite a mouthful. It was originally developed by Francine Shapiro to treat trauma, was the idea. But it has been used in other areas as well. Basically, it is a way to treat various conditions that are really kind of stuck in the brain, and it's a way to kind of treat from the bottom up rather than from the top down, which is what more traditional therapies do. Very often those traditional therapies can be really wonderful and are still really useful, but they often focus on that top-down approach, meaning we're trying to take a thinking cognitive approach on a brain that is kind of stuck in that fight or flight, which are deeper centers of the brain that kind of control our basic functions and are always kind of on high alert, ready for any scenario. And they also kind of govern our emotions, that regulation component. And so when we're living in those states of the brain, a lot of times it can make those top-down approaches really ineffective and take a lot longer versus when we kind of go to the root and go inside a bit and then come up. So the way that I have been describing EMDR to clients is that when we experience stress or trauma, sometimes those experiences get stuck in our brain, kind of block us from being able to move through life in the way that we wish to. And so the process of EMDR helps to move those situations, those memories, to different parts of the brain where they can be processed a little more holistically, a little more adaptively, and can just kind of allow us to move through life more in the way that we wish to. So that's usually my approach. In explaining it, I keep it really simple. You can, dive as deep into the neuroscience of it as you wish. It's fascinating. But I find that a simple explanation is really helpful for a lot of clients. So that has kind of been my approach. In this process of EMDR, as we're building the relationships with our clients, we're listening for negative beliefs that they have maybe taken on about themselves, and exploring what events in their life that might be connected to, if there's any specific triggers, memories, body sensations that come up that are kind of connected to that negative belief. And then we also are practicing a lot of coping skills. That's called resourcing in EMDR. So when we start to bring up these memories, these sensations, we want to make sure that people are equipped to handle that intensity. So we spend a lot of time on resourcing, which in other modalities, it's a lot of the coping skills that you would expect, grounding, exercises, things like that. Really, any resourcing is anything that's adaptive. So anything that is helpful and useful for the client to help them move through this is resourcing. Once those resources are in place, we move to reprocessing, where you use bilateral stimulation. Now, originally this was with eye movements, with people moving their fingers back and forth like that, and you follow the fingers, but it doesn't even have to be that. A lot of therapists have little tappers that kind of buzz in each hand, and you just kind of alternate and follow that. I have been doing self-tapping, so it can be a butterfly tap, it can be taps on your legs. Really any form of bilateral stimulation can be used. though my trainer personally recommends going with eye movements whenever possible. You do that reprocessing with that bilateral stimulation, and that is what kind of helps those negative beliefs and those memories get moved to other parts of the brain where they can process in a healthier way that won't keep the person as stuck. This is a really brief explanation, so I encourage you to explore more and kind of dig deeper if this sounds like it's interesting to you, but I just wanted to kind of, share some of the basics. So you might be wondering, like, why now? When you're in grad school, should you get trained in something this specific? Shouldn't you get the basics down first? The training is expensive and you're already paying all this money for school. But I chose to train while in school for a few different reasons. For one, my supervisor is an EMDR consultant, which means she has taken lots and lots of extra training, has tons of experience with EMDR, and now consults for EMDR. So what that means is that she is really an expert in this. And so I've thought, wow, when else am I going to have the kind of access that I do now to somebody who's an expert in this than when I'm, having weekly supervision and working really closely with my supervisor. So it just seemed like a really smart thing to do for my own growth. And then also, because she does so much EMDR, a lot of people come to the practice seeking EMDR. And truthfully, with all the hours that I need for my internship, I wanted to be on that list of people at the practice who she can refer to ethically provide this service. And then finally, like, my last reason for doing it now is I have received EMDR as a client with my own therapist before, and my own therapist is very passionate about EMDR. And it's been really helpful for me. It's really taken things that were way, way, way up here and really, really scary and really brought them to a manageable level. One of the misconceptions I had about it, and I was kind of skeptical about it, is is it going to make me forget things? Because I don't want to forget these experiences. These are painful things, yes, but that doesn't mean I don't want to remember them. And it will not make you forget anything, just helps you move through it with a greater sense of peace, almost. It takes the intensity level way down so that you don't feel like you're just, constantly in that state of fight, flight, or freeze, right? So that's what it's really intended to do. And when you really get to those negative beliefs too, a lot of even deeper healing can happen. So for the training requirements, with EMDR, you really do want to train specifically through EMDRIA, EMDRIA, because that is really the only certifying organization and the only organization that is really recognized. So there's other, trainings out there where you can kind of learn about EMDR, but it's not really going to teach you how to do it very effectively. And so it is such a specific modality that I really do believe you should be trained specifically in it before you start doing it. Training consists of, I think it's usually 6 days. Some trainings have it where it's 6 days all in a row, maybe even 5 days all in a row that are longer days, I'm not sure, but 6 days all in a row. And then in addition to that, you also need 10 consultation hours. The other format of training, which is what I did, is when they split it in two. So for mine, I did 3 days in July. There was 2 months in between the first and the second part of training. And in that first part, you really learned the basics of EMDR, and you were encouraged to start using it with clients pretty quickly, pretty much right away, with more basic cases, maybe like the most complex trauma. So I started doing that. And then the second part of the training, you came back and you learned more about special populations and like what to do if you're stuck or, just certain situations. So that was the second part of training, and then lots more practice. So both blocks of training, almost half the time was spent in either a partnership, like just 2 people or 3 people, where you were practicing and doing EMDR on each other. And so that was a large part of the training. So overall, my experience was really positive. When choosing an organization to train with, you again want to make sure that it is an EMDRIA approved foundational training. That's going to really give you the basics. And then each of those organizations that you train with are going to have a list of approved consultants where you can get 10 hours of consultation within a year of whenever your first date of training was. And so that is the requirements. So overall, my experience of training was very positive. Things to keep in mind when you're choosing an organization to train with, again, you want to make sure that it is with that EMDRIA foundational training. Any of those are going to provide you the basics for you to use EMDR with pretty much any population that you are already qualified to serve. So for example, if you don't already work with kids and are not qualified to work with kids, you wouldn't want to just start using EMDR with kids. But if it's a population that you already have that training and expertise in, and you're, providing counseling for that population already, then, and you're adding EMDR, that foundational training is what's going to give you those skills that you need. And then beyond that, when you're training, choosing a training organization, my recommendation is look first at the schedule and what format you want. So pick one that works with your schedule and pick the format you want, whether you want it all 5 or 6 days at once, if you want it split, if you want it in person, if you want it online. I did mine online and I feel really good about that. I didn't feel like I was missing out by not being able to do it in person. And in fact, I actually think it was cool to kind of learn how to do EMDR virtually, since that is just so much more common. That wasn't like a weird thing for me to try to figure out. Find the organization that's got the format and that you like. And this is an investment, right? So as long as you're going through that EMDRIA foundational training, you will be ethically qualified to provide this. So that for me is what's most important, right? But you spend a lot of money on this training, and so what do you kind of want out of it beyond that? So you can look, there are a lot of different niches that have kind of tailored their EMDRIA training to have like a specific interest, right? And so I actually ended up going with an organization that focuses on the perinatal population because that is the population I work with and I'm really passionate about it. I have a lot of experience with it. My supervisor wanted me to know that I didn't have to pick that group in order to be able to serve them well with EMDR. So she really wanted me to focus again on that scheduling, the format, just how I was feeling overall towards the training. So I really appreciated that. However, I am also really glad that I took the training I did, because I found that because it did focus so much on the perinatal population, I really could connect with the material and understand it and enjoy the examples more than maybe I would have in more of a generalist. So it's nothing you need to do. You don't need to seek out a super niched training in that way. But if you it's working out for your schedule and format wise, and you're wanting to gain, of course, as much as you can from this investment you made, I think it's worth looking at, like, what kind of focus does each organization have, because I think there can be differences. So I hope this video was helpful. I wanted to share a little bit about my experience. If this content sounds like something you want to stick around for, I would be honored if you clicked that subscribe and the like button and follow me for more.